Keanu Reeves went to the hospital and what they told him shocked him. Behind the camera, beneath the fame, Keanu Reeves had a secret few ever discovered. It started with whispers, anonymous letters, unconfirmed complaints, and one shaky voice message left on the Trust emergency line. This place isn't what it seems anymore. Patients cry while doctors smile for donors. Someone needs to fix this. He would walk into his own hospital, as a stranger, and find the truth for himself. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and like the video so you don't miss tomorrow's video. Keanu walked through the sliding glass doors of St. Amos Hope Center dressed like any other patient's family member, worn jeans, an old flannel shirt, a plain cap pulled low over his eyes. No entourage. No cameras. Just the weight of suspicion pressing on his chest. The reception area, once warm and welcoming, now felt sterile and cold. The receptionist didn't look up when he approached. Hi, Keanu said quietly. I'm here to see my uncle. He was admitted this morning. She clicked her pen, sighed, and pushed a clipboard toward him without meeting his gaze. Fill this out. Sit. Wait. Keanu blinked. That wasn't how it used to be. He took a seat near a vending machine and watched. The waiting room was full, exhausted mothers with toddlers, an elderly man wheezing in a wheelchair, a young woman holding her stomach in pain. No one offered water. No one even smiled. But what hit Keanu the hardest was the man in the corner, quietly moaning, ignored. Then came him. Dr. Marcus strode into the room like a man who thought he owned it. Tall, sharp suit under his lab coat, hair slicked back, phone glued to his hand. He barely glanced at the patients as he moved. But when a man in a tailored suit with an expensive watch walked in, Marcus broke into a wide grin. Mr. Langston, the doctor beamed. Right this way. We'll skip the line. Keanu's jaw clenched. And then the moment that lit a fire inside him. A nurse approached Marcus and whispered, Room 4, Mr. Delgado's son is asking if we can run one more scan. He doesn't have insurance, though. Marcus didn't whisper back. He wanted everyone to hear. No insurance? Tell him he can Google his symptoms for free. Or get a YouTube degree. The nurse flinched, but said nothing. Keanu froze, his hands gripping the armrest of the waiting room chair. Then Marcus turned and walked by the moaning man in the corner. Somebody either sedate that guy or move him. We've got important guests today. Keanu didn't react, at least, not on the outside. Inside, he was a storm. He stayed quiet in the corner, blending in, just like he'd done on movie sets to observe a scene before stepping into it. But this scene wasn't fiction. This was his dream, his hospital, being twisted by arrogance and greed. For hours, he stayed in the building. He moved from floor to floor, quietly watching. The staff mostly ignored him, assuming he was just another visitor. He noticed patterns. Nurses who rushed past patients. Doctors who laughed behind closed doors. A janitor who offered more comfort than any physician. In one room, Keanu saw a child crying from a botched blood draw, her mother begging for help. A nurse shrugged. We're understaffed, she said, walking away. In another, he watched a man try to explain his symptoms to a young intern, only to be brushed off because his vitals weren't impressive enough. But what truly shook him was the complaint box. It was empty. Impossibly empty. He knew people were unhappy. He'd seen it. Yet the box had no forms inside. So he checked the trash can nearby. Dozens of crumpled complaints. He picked one up and smoothed it out. The doctor told me I didn't look sick enough to need a bed. I haven't eaten in days. I don't want free food. I want dignity. Keanu folded the paper slowly. His hands were trembling. He finally understood. The staff wasn't just overworked. They were unaccountable. There were no checks, no feedback loop, no empathy training. Just a growing culture of entitlement. And at the center of it all, Dr. Marcus. That night, Keanu went home, took off his cap, and stared at himself in the mirror. He knew what had to come next. The next morning, the hospital staff buzzed with tension. Whispers floated through the hallways. Something was off. A board member was visiting, they said. Or maybe a health inspector. Dr. Marcus scoffed at the rumors, too secure in his status to worry. That's when Keanu walked in, this time through the main entrance, no cap, no disguise. He wore a simple dark suit, quiet in color but loud in presence. The receptionist blinked in confusion. Staff paused mid-task. Nurses froze in the middle of their morning reports. Keanu Reeves wasn't just famous. He was the man behind the trust, the silent benefactor. Dr. Marcus, mid-sip of his espresso, turned the corner and stopped cold. Keanu locked eyes with him across the hallway. The silence was thunderous. Keanu spoke, calm and cool as steel. Dr. Marcus, we need to talk. In the boardroom, now, word spread like wildfire. Employees lined the hallway, watching them walk past. Keanu's quiet footsteps carried more weight than any shout. Inside the boardroom, administrators sat stiffly in their chairs. Keanu placed a folder on the table. Inside, printouts of shredded complaints he had retrieved, screenshots from the hospital's internal system showing policy violations, and a simple, handwritten statement at the top. This hospital was meant to heal, not humiliate. Dr. Marcus tried to speak, to charm, to defend, but Keanu didn't give him the chance. He leaned forward, his voice low, steady, and final. "Let me save you the effort. You're done here." Marcus chuckled awkwardly, trying to reclaim control. "Excuse me." And then Keanu stood up fully, stared him down, and delivered it with grace and fire. "You're fired." The room went still. No yelling, no theatrics, just 5 seconds of silence that echoed louder than any courtroom gavel. By the afternoon, Dr. Marcus was gone. The hospital halls, once filled with nervous energy and quiet fear, felt different, lighter. No official announcement had been made yet, but word of Keanu's dramatic confrontation had already traveled from the cafeteria to the surgical suites. And for the first time in a long time, hope had a heartbeat. Keanu didn't stop there. He gathered the full administrative team and stood at the front of the meeting room, not as a celebrity, not even as the donor, but as a man reclaiming his purpose. "I built this hospital to help people," he began. "Not to impress the wealthy, not to turn away the desperate, and not to let compassion get swallowed by policy." He took a breath, locking eyes with every person in the room. That ends today. He unveiled the Mercy Protocol, a sweeping new policy initiative. Every change had a purpose. Anonymous complaint boxes on every floor, checked weekly by an external review board. Empathy training for all staff, mandatory every quarter. No preference treatment policy. No patient would be prioritized because of income, insurance, or appearance. Rotating undercover shifts for administrators. Mandatory walkthroughs of the ER, waiting room, and cafeteria in plain clothes. And the most powerful change of all, a simple card handed to every patient on arrival. If you feel unheard, write it down. Someone is listening. With a direct, sealed drop box only accessible by Keanu's personal trust investigators. Staff murmured in disbelief. Some scoffed. Others started to believe. Keanu finished the meeting with no raised voice, no demand. Just a truth. "We forgot who we are? Let's remember now." Then he walked out, back into the heart of the hospital, not as a stranger this time, but as a man on a mission. Not everyone welcomed the changes. Within 24 hours of the Mercy Protocol rollout, friction sparked across departments. Whispers turned to mutterings, and mutterings turned to open defiance. Some senior doctors scoffed at the empathy training, calling it a waste of clinical hours. Others claimed the anonymous complaint system would become a witch hunt. A few threatened to resign altogether. One bold department head even cornered Keanu near the pediatric wing. "You're a good man, Mr. Reeves," she said. "But this isn't how hospitals are run. It's chaos. You'll lose your best people." Keanu looked her in the eye and replied without flinching. Then maybe they were never the right people. Still, the resistance grew louder. A group of senior staff sent an internal petition demanding a rollback of certain reforms. They cited operational inefficiency and morale concerns. Keanu didn't argue. He did something more powerful. He walked the floors. Every day, in jeans and a hoodie, not a suit. He sat beside patients. He served soup in the cafeteria. He helped wheel elderly visitors to the elevators. Quietly, consistently, without a camera in sight. And people noticed. One nurse, skeptical at first, found herself smiling again during her shift. A janitor left a note in the new complaint box. Not a complaint, but a thank you. Even a teenage intern, who had once considered quitting, said this in a staff meeting. "I used to feel invisible here. Now I feel like I matter." The tide didn't turn overnight, but the foundation shook. Keanu knew what they didn't. Resistance was a sign of impact, and he wasn't going anywhere. Something had changed, not just in policy, but in energy. The cold, transactional feel that once haunted the halls of St. Amos Hope Center began to melt away, replaced by something warmer, more human. Keanu had done more than fire a toxic doctor or sign off on a few reforms. He'd ignited a culture shift. One day, a nurse stayed late. Not because she was scheduled, but because a scared teenage girl in the ER didn't want to be alone. Another day, a cafeteria worker took it upon himself to decorate the children's wing with drawings and jokes pinned to the walls. Laughter, real, unexpected laughter, was heard echoing through the hallway. The anonymous boxes overflowed, but not with anger. There were suggestions, ideas, even thank you notes. To whoever started this box, thank you. I felt like I was screaming underwater. Now someone hears me. I've been a nurse for 14 years. Today was the first time I saw the director of this place carry a bedpan. That meant something. Keanu kept reading every note personally. At night, after the last rounds of coffee and quiet conversations, he sat in his small, windowless office tucked behind the chapel and read each message like a letter from a soul in recovery. Then came a moment that caught him off guard. A little girl named Ava, bald from chemotherapy, handed him a drawing. It showed him, not in a suit or a movie poster, but wearing jeans, kneeling beside a hospital bed, holding someone's hand. Above it she wrote, "Mr. K, you're like Batman, but real." He couldn't stop the tears that time. Not because he was overwhelmed, but because, maybe, finally, the hospital had become what he dreamed. A place where healing wasn't just about medicine. The hospital was no longer the same. Walls once lined with silence now echoed with conversation, warmth, and even moments of joy. It wasn't perfect, but it was alive again. Keanu saw it in the way patients smiled more, how staff started greeting each other by name, how even the worn-down walls seemed to stand taller. But then he returned. Dr. Marcus, not in a lab coat, not even in a suit, just a man in a sweater, holding a letter, standing in the hospital lobby like a ghost unsure of his place in the world. Keanu was notified immediately. Some staff wanted him removed from the premises, others were just stunned. But Keanu asked them to let him be. He found Marcus sitting alone on a bench outside the chapel, staring into space. Keanu sat beside him, silent for a moment. "You came back," he said softly. Marcus didn't look at him. "I didn't come to beg for my job. I didn't think you did. I came to say you were right," Marcus murmured. "About everything. I watched videos of the hospital now, read the stories, saw what it's become, and it made me feel sick." Keanu studied him, calm and unreadable. Marcus continued, his voice trembling just slightly. "I thought compassion was a weakness. I thought efficiency was king. I didn't see the people, just the process." Keanu finally spoke. "People aren't statistics. They're stories." Marcus nodded slowly. "I never believed that. Until now." He handed Keanu the letter. It was a donation from his own personal savings. Nothing massive, but enough to say, "I want to help, even if I can't stay." Keanu stood up and said quietly, "Everyone deserves a second chance, just not always in the same chapter." Marcus looked down and nodded. He understood. Keanu walked away, leaving Marcus behind on the bench. No bitterness, no vengeance. Just mercy. Because that's what the hospital stood for now. Mercy. Even for those who once failed it. It was a quiet Thursday afternoon when Keanu passed through the pediatric wing. The air was still, the kind of stillness that only exists between 4 beeps and whispered prayers. That's when he saw him, a boy no older than 7, sitting cross-legged on a hospital bed, his small frame wrapped in a too large hoodie. His name tag read, Luis. Keanu paused, gently knocked on the doorframe. "Mind if I sit?" Luis looked up with tired eyes, then gave a shy nod. Keanu sat beside him, not as a movie star or a founder, just as a man who cared. "Rough day?" Keanu asked. Luis shrugged. "I had a test. It hurt." Keanu nodded softly. "I'm sorry, but it's okay," Luis added. "Because I heard you fixed this place." Keanu blinked. "Who told you that?" Luis grinned. "Nurse Jenna. She said you made the bad doctors go away and made it nice again." Keanu chuckled. "Well, I just helped. The real heroes wear scrubs." Luis leaned in, whispering like it was a secret. "Can I tell you something?" "Of course. I want to be a doctor. But a good one. Like the ones who listen." That was it. The moment. Not the media buzz. Not the applause in meetings. But this little boy's dream. Born not from fear or trauma, but hope. Hope that doctors could be more than white coats. They could be heroes too. Keanu reached into his pocket and pulled out a worn silver coin he always carried. Something his late friend had given him years ago. He placed it in Luis's hand. "Then this is yours now," he said. Carry it until the day you become the kind of doctor people remember with love. Luis's eyes widened. Is it magic? Keanu smiled. Only if you believe in what you stand for.